welcome back. We have breaking news. A tornado warning has been issued for Pacific County. Ashley, what's going on?
Well, Jessica, we have a waterspout that is offshore. The National Weather Service out of Portland issued a tornado warning, a pretty rare tornado warning. It is observed, so that means it was seen and not just radar indicated. So it is moving to the northeast, roughly at 25 miles per hour, and could move toward Tokeland by 4:32. And so that is just in about 15 minutes or so. This tornado warning is in place until 4:30. And so again, just another 15 minutes or so, but it is observed. Still a couple of miles offshore, but it kind of has this hooking shape to it. That means it is showing signs of rotation. So this is in Pacific County right now. And once again, this is going to continue until 4:30. And so it still has that potential to hold together tornadic as it pushes ashore. We'll continue to watch this and keep you guys posted. Let's send it back to you.
Ashley, I want to ask you a quick question, because obviously this is the last thing people want to see after the storms we experienced last night.
Right.
How rare is a tornado warning like this, in this part of the country?
Well, the Pacific Northwest, on average, maybe one, maybe two tornado warnings per year, 1 to 3 on average. So this is pretty rare. In fact, meteorologist Adam Claiborne behind the scenes is actually tracking this storm for us. And in fact, it looks as though this tornado warning was just extended to include Grays Harbor County now in portions of Western Washington. So as of right now, this is now in place until 4:45 this afternoon. So another 30 minutes. Again, this is because we have water spouts developing offshore, but as they start to move inland, they'll still hold together. This is not a fair weather water spout. This is a tornadic water spout. So it will likely be pretty much on the weak side of things, but this could impact about 34,000 people. So the National Weather Service once again has issued this tornado warning. It's extended this tornado warning, and it looks as though it's going to include Aberdeen perhaps, and then portions of Westport. So we are going to track this very carefully, but if you do live in this area, especially if you have friends, family, make sure you get into that safe place, because you don't want to be by the water. You don't want to be by any glass. You don't want to be by any windows as well, because even if it doesn't, or it's not an actual tornado, by the time it reaches you, wind gust. Even if you have wind gusts 40, 50 miles per hour, this could still cause some major issues. So you see Adam right now, he is walking us through this. So this is where we have to watch for the potential for this water spout to move ashore. You see how we have this little hooking nodule right there. It could even approach 105 near Tokeland Road within the next couple of minutes. And again, since this is moving to the northeast, roughly 25, 30 miles per hour, this could start to move inland as well. So this tells us, since the tornado warning was extended to include portions of Washington as well, far southwestern Washington, that's likely going to hold together as we head into the next 30 minutes or so. So that is why we have that tornado warning in place. You see this red polygon? This is all the areas that we could potentially see the impacts from this one storm. This includes Grayland, and this is where we have the state line, and then going more to the north as well. So another thing we're watching for this, the potential for these water spouts, tornadic water spouts starting to lift ashore and maybe even crossing 105 within the next couple of minutes. Right now, once again, it is offshore. So we are going to keep a close eye out on this. And you see the greens, you see the reds together. It's a little hard to see, I know, but this is the area we're watching. When you have red and you have greens on the velocity, this shows where we have winds that could be rotating. You have reds that go away from the radar site, and then you have the green colors right here. That's indicating the winds going toward the radar site. And so we have these twisting winds, and that could mean where we have this tornado, and that could move inland, maybe toward North Cove. That's where we are seeing at least some of that red and green together. It's like a little circle on the radar. So you see that right there. See that red and that green together? It's almost like a little ball. That's indicating where we have those twisting winds. So again, tornado warnings in place for portions of Grays Harbor and then into portions of Pacific County as well. So we're going to continue to watch this very carefully. Adam, if you want to move a little more to the north so we can call out some of these towns.
Yeah, and actually, I want to ask you, because as we look at this map you're showing us what's going on here, this is, as you said, very rare for us to have in this area. For those of us in this region, what should we be doing? Should we be staying home? Should we be going to a certain place in our house?
Absolutely. So if you do have a basement, you are included in portions of Grays Harbor as well as in Pacific County. Go to your basement if you have it. You want to make sure you put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Make sure that you're not on an exterior room of your house, because if this does, in fact, move closer to your house, that means some projectiles could definitely fly. And we've seen this with some of these windstorms that we have. We have some of these really strong, maybe piles and some debris that could fly, and that could go in toward maybe some of the exterior rooms of your house. So as many walls between you and the outside as possible, and that is going to be key, away from windows. Don't go looking for this, because yes, you might see a waterspout offshore from the distance, especially if you live near the coast, but this isn't going to dissipate as it moves inland. So that is why this tornado warning was extended to include portions of Grays Harbor County. Mike.
Hi there.
Hi.
You're doing a fantastic
well, thank
job.
You.
Thank you so much for getting out ahead of us. So basically, stick with me here, because again, this is really important. We don't get tornado watches or warnings here very often, as you mentioned.
Right.
And when we do, they're usually of the weak variety. Remember, the National Weather Service can't really gauge these until they get a chance to go out and assess. But what we've had here with this system is the mixing of warm and cold air. So when you think about it, you've got this cold air coming in with the system that's mixing with this relatively warm air as soon as it meets land. When you get those mixing up like that, that is the nexus of tornadic activity. So it's this area here where especially you see these darker colors where you'll get that stronger rotation. Actually, you said it once, but it bears repeating. If you are in this vicinity, you need to get indoors. You need to get into a place that preferably doesn't have any windows. Bathrooms are a great option in a place like this. So again, these winds can get up 70, 80, sometimes even 100 miles an hour. And this is continuing to move from the southeast towards the northeast here. So it's going to make its way. It'll probably lose velocity as it starts to make its way into the Olympics here. But along the immediate coastline, this is really going to be for the next 15, 20 minutes here. Also, Adam, if you can zoom out a little bit, I want to show you the entire coast here, because what we've got is this system that's battering and with heavy, heavy lightning and strong bouts of rain, not only along Westport, and just to give you a little bit of context right here, there's North Cove, there's Raymond, there we go. We zoom it out a little bit. You see Hump Tulips right there, but as we're looking up towards the northern portion, like up towards Forks and areas up there, also seeing strong areas of storm that are bringing in rotation right now. So it's not just this immediate area here, which of course is the most important part, but as we take a look up along the immediate coast, again, not as heavily populated as other parts around the region, but still very strong, very powerful, and very dangerous. So again, just to reiterate here, this is where the tornado warning is. This is not a watch. This is not an advisory. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly ask you, because a lot of people at home might be wondering, is this directly related to the bomb cyclone that we just experienced?
Yes, it is. So one of the things that we were talking, it's a great question, is last night, this system didn't come on shore. Like normally when we're tracking a system, it comes on shore, there's wind, there's rain, and then it moves off towards the east. This system is going to sit off the coast here and tumble for the next couple of days. So we were talking about the possibility of these bands continuing to rotate through for the next couple of days, and that's exactly what we're seeing here, is these strong bands of storms not only walking in along the coast, but making their way up the Kitsap Peninsula. Remember last week we saw heavy storms and rain along the Kitsap Peninsula in places like Brennan. The Duckabush River flooded up there. So this is not only along the coast, but we expect these strong bands to continue to move towards the northeast through the rest of the night. Again, if you're just joining us, this is a tornado warning that isn't affecting Grays Harbor County, currently set to go until about 4:45. So we've got a little bit further to go here. And again, if you're getting our signal, if you're getting this message right now, it is imperative that you get yourself indoors, get yourself to a safe place, get off the roads. This thing is mean. Those winds can get up well over 70, 80 miles an hour.
I have a question. I know you guys are scientists and not future tellers, but what's the likelihood that something like this could happen further up the northern coast as we approach into the Canadian waters?
Very high.
Yeah.
In fact, last night with the storm, there was one buoy that actually recorded a 100-mile-an-hour gust. It was 101 just off of the coast of Vancouver Island. So again, when you get that mix of that really cold air, that really warm air, it creates that rotation of the two of them trying to find an equilibrium. So yeah, not just this area, but as we just saw a moment ago, all the way up and down the coast, it's going to be dangerous tonight and possibly up into Canada as well.
Ashley, I know you have a lot of experience covering tornadoes where you were previously located. So what, should people know? What have you lived through? And is it rare to see this warning kind of extended? We saw it stop at 4:30, now it's 4:45.
Yeah, well, I mean, with this, especially once they start over water, the Waterspout, and we both worked covering the Gulf of Mexico, and this was very common all the time. You would get these little thunderstorms that would develop, and they would spawn waterspouts, and you can see them off in the distance oftentimes. Now, not so much because the sun is going down, but a lot of time they do hold together, and they move to the northeast, they accelerate to the northeast, and they can hold together, especially if they go back over water. So that is why this is going to also be something to watch. And with those storms up to the north, might also have to watch for some more of these water spouts for the north coast.
Mike, when you said also because this is related to the bomb cyclone, we have these bands. So, as Ashley's mentioning, we're going to keep an eye on this. Is this a possibility for maybe later tonight as well? I mean, obviously we're in the thick of it right now. We're waiting for this to hopefully pass, but what is the time that we're looking at, the time frame of keeping our eyes closed or open for these types of rotation?
I would say easily through the rest of the night tonight,
Really?
Jessica. Yeah. Now, again, we don't want to send widespread, fear to everybody. Again, this is a really isolated spot. But as we were discussing in our forecast last night, you see these bands coming in off the coast right now, and we were expecting that. And as they make their way inland here, Ashley was saying it perfectly. Over top of water is where it really gets a chance to mix up the most. So the possibility of any tornadic activity along Puget Sound tonight, very low. Kitsap Peninsula could get a real interesting later tonight around 7, 8, 9 o'clock as these bands continue to move in. But it's really along the immediate coast for the time being. But of course, it's something we're just going to have to keep a close eye on through the rest of the night. And a lot of times when you're doing severe coverage like this, it's not being able to really tell you, okay, at this time, this is going to happen here. It's kind of more like watching it and monitoring it and then just letting people know as these things pop up.
Well, anybody who's been in this part of the state knows it's pretty rural in this spot of Washington. Does that help the storm at all grow in intensity, or does it make a difference as far as topography goes when storms like this are traveling across land?
Well, I mean, yes and no, especially since it is rural. Adam, was the warning canceled?
Yeah, it looks like it just was.
Okay, so
Fantastic.
Okay, that's great news there. So that means it
No.
oh, never mind.
Looks like it's been extended, possibly.
It's been 4:45, or is that correct for Grays Harbor? Grays Harbor.
Still 4:45.
Still 4:45. So
It looks like the land mass that is red has gotten bigger. Is that true?
Up in the ocean shores,
It's
Aberdeen.
entirely possible that the footprint has been extended. That's maybe why we saw it kind of blip there for a second.
Wow.
And this, just to answer your question, a lot of it does have to do with topography. So storms like little resistance.
Yeah.
When they're over water, they're not getting a lot of resistance. As soon as they hit land, and especially as soon as they hit any type of elevation, then it kind of jostles them a little bit and makes it so that they can't stay as strong as they were if they were over, say, flat land. That's why we see a lot of tornadoes in places like Kansas. But as soon as it kind of makes its way inland and hits a little bit of topography here, it kind of jostles it up and will help break it up a little bit. Will it still be a strong cell? You bet. But it won't be as powerful as it will be when it first makes landfall there along the shore.
I see the hail size there. Does that mean we have confirmed hail in that area?
Let's take a look here.
it's definitely
Yes.
possible. These storms that have popped up near the coast today alone, they have produced a little bit of hail. In this case, it's small hail. It's severe hail. You have to have greater 1-inch diameter, but that's just to show you that it's a hazard, a potential thunderstorm. And people affected, Mike, 34,000. It's rural, but
It's still
not enough.
significant, yeah.
It looks too like I mean, since we've started to track this, that this area has grown in size, as Jessica was just saying. Now we've got Aberdeen, Hoquiam, Ocean Shores. These are highly populated areas in Grays Harbor County.
You bet. And remember that Westport itself is a very active and vibrant
Yes.
port
Right.
where a lot of people come and go from. And so it's right kind of in that region right now as we speak.
We have our desk checking on whether there's any power outages in that area, because that obviously is a concern. We have seen massive power outages across Western Washington after last night, so I want to let our viewers know that we're checking in on that. But if you do have family or friends in that area, perhaps trying to get a hold of them, via cell phone if possible, would be a good idea, because they may not be, glued to their TVs, or tell them to get onto king5.com or on our app and try to stream some of this information.
And to your point, remember that this is also the area that was in that high wind warning last night. We put a lot of focus on the foothills off towards King and Snohomish and Pierce counties, but this area also saw wind gusts in excess of 40, 50, and 60 miles an hour last night. So to add this on top of that, there's already a lot of trees and power poles that are unstable. Then you add winds that could, again, gust 50, 60, 70 miles an hour plus. We could be looking at more power outages and even communication outages as we go through the night.
I know there are some tsunami sirens in those areas. I wonder if they'll be used in this case. But obviously the concern is trying to get people to shelter. Will you reiterate, just because we don't have too many tornadoes in Washington State, what folks at home should be doing right this minute?
Right this minute, get into that safe place. As many walls between you and the outside as possible. Don't go outside looking for it. And that is going to be the most important thing. People want to, they hear something. We don't get this all too often. They want to go outside. But no, by any means, that's going to be the most important thing. As many walls between you and the outside. If you have a basement, that is going to be the safest place that you can go to. And a bathroom, like you mentioned.
Interior, no windows.
That's the most important thing.
And then one of the things that we remember from the coverage when we were in the Southeast is that if you hear that rumble, if there's something that sounds kind of unusual, like a train, and you don't live anywhere near a railroad track, that is a clear sign that there's something going on outside, and that is a sign for immediate get indoors, get into the interior space. Again, try and get off the roads, try and get into a safe space there, and get as low as possible if you don't have any other options.
I used to live in Amarillo, which is, Tornado Alley, and I heard someone say, jump in that bathtub if you can.
Especially if you don't have any exterior or interior rooms, a bathtub, if you can grab that mattress. I know it sounds silly, but that is important, because anything that falls, if your roof collapses, for example, or you have projectiles going through your windows, for example, as well, because these winds are no joke, especially on top of the gradient winds that we've had as well. And when you have twisting winds, you could just have projectiles flying all over the place as well. Another thing, Mike, you mentioned stay off the roads. 105, it's going over that right now as we speak, and could be in Markham if it holds together about 453. That's if it's moving to the northeast around 25 miles per hour.
And if it holds together, it looks like it's going to go over water. Will that I would imagine that would really not be a good thing for anybody on the other side of that.
Exactly, and in the context of what we were just talking about, Steve, again, no resistance. So it's had resistance as it's been going over land. It goes back over open water, and now all of a sudden it's got the fuel that it needs to accelerate and keep moving again. So yeah, these things can sometimes wind down and then wind back up again. So great point there.
I know this may be very basic, but if you'll help us just read the map right now. Earlier we had that direction that it was traveling, I think across Grayland, across the highway as well. We're zoomed out a little bit right now, but what's happening in those red areas versus the yellow, and kind of see the purple pop in there when the radar goes over. So just walk us through what these different areas mean, please.
Certainly. When you have the reds, the red, or the warmer the color, if you will, that means we could have some really heavy rain within that. We could also have some hail embedded in this as well. So just to the south of Grayland, in fact, moving ashore, that's where we could have some blinding rain. And then as this moves to the northeast as well and lifts toward portions closer to Aberdeen, this is where we'll have to watch out for, right here. If it gets back onto water, that will be something to watch out for. That's likely why the National National Weather Service did go ahead and include Aberdeen and Ocean Shores, because not just that, you see how when the little beam starts circling around, you saw how it was just pulsing up those reds as well. That's indicating some of the heavier spots and heavier pockets within this one little cell. And so it is just to the southeast of Grayland. And if it continues to make that track to the northeast, again, Mike, and we've been mentioning, if it goes back over water and starts to push closer to Aberdeen, that's why they are included in this warning as well. Another important thing, typically, we have those WEA alerts, the wireless emergency alert system. If you get Amber alerts or anything like that, or any emergency alerts on your phone, you should get this tornado warning. If you did not, and you live in Grayland, including Aberdeen, Ocean Shores, make sure you go on your phone and toggle those on. That is very important, so you can get, as soon as the warnings are issued, you'll get that push notification to your phone. Your phone should make a very loud noise as well.
I have some good news coming in. Our producer, Alexis, just told me that it looks like they don't have any current outages there,
Good.
which is great. Hopefully people are able to get some emergency information. And so a lot of the power that was out there was restored since last night. Obviously, they're dealing with this right now, and so who knows if we will have more power outages in the hours to come. But that is definitely a bit of good news for folks that are riding this out.
You bet.
Yeah.
I think I'm concerned, though, for people, because right now it's about 4:30 at night. People are driving in this area. People drive back and forth between
Yes.
one small town to the next. Maybe you live in Aberdeen, but you might work over in Ocean Shores or Hoquiam or somewhere nearby, and the sun's down. And it's going to be dark. People are driving through driving rain.
Yep.
I mean, this is a really serious situation, whether or not they come across a waterspout.
You bet. Again, because we
Yeah.
just saw the verified hail there, and then you have that driving rain. You put some wind on top of it right as it's getting dark. It is scary. Just want to give you a quick update here. What we've done is we've changed this so it's a 30-minute loop, so you can see exactly what's happening in current time right now. And as we were discussing here, these cells are the strongest right here, right in Grays Harbor County. Now, what's going to happen here is a couple of things. You notice that it's moving towards the north and east, so definitely keeping an eye on Aberdeen, but up towards 101, these things have a tendency to curve a little bit as they come on shore. So if you're thinking that it's going to make a straight northeastern trajectory, it's probably going to do something a little bit more like this and kind of walk hopefully to the west of Aberdeen. But again, you can see that it's in the warning cone right there. It's an area that we're definitely keeping an eye on. But as we're watching this 30-minute progression here, it's already kind of starting to make that curve and that turn, which would actually be good news. Again, it would stay clear of Aberdeen and then kind of walk off towards the western side of the Olympics. But these things do whatever they're going to do. They don't follow a
Exactly.
script. But just watching this pattern here as we just kind of unpack the last 30 minutes, it kind of seems to be making that curve there. But
Right.
again, over open water, it could re-strengthen.
It looks as though it is making more, instead of the northeast track that it was initially looking like, more north-northeast. And just like you said, these things tend to wobble and they have a mind of their own. So,
Right now, this tornado warning is issued until 4:45, right?
Correct.
So we want to let our viewers know that we're going to stay with them through this until that expires, or if it's extended, we'll be with you. We do want to show some information that we have here about how to stay safe, and maybe you guys can walk us through this. But basically, to find a safe place to be in those high winds, and also to find a sturdy building if that's possible, find a small room. You've been telling us about this, but if you'll just go over that one more time, as folks are perhaps starting to tune in and really are starting to get worried.
One of my mentors back in weather school had a phrase that stuck with me for a long, long time. It's not that the wind blows, it's what the wind blows. So when you think about it in that context, Jessica, like anything that could potentially break or blow, glass is the biggest concern. That's why we're telling people to get into an interior space. For most people, the bathroom is that place.
Yes.
Now, sometimes there'll be a little window in the bathroom or something, but if you can get into an interior closet, somewhere that doesn't have windows and has good structure around it, that's usually your best bet and your best call there.
So a walk-in closet, for example.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. And again,
Yeah.
something as interior into the building as you can think of. Now, a lot of times people don't have options. They were outside, they were in their car, they're looking for something. Again, you want to try and find something that is as tight and as small and as secure as it can possibly be, with the least possibility of anything becoming projectile around you. And again, suddenly everything becomes projectile. The rocks on the ground, the sticks, the trees, lumber, 2x4s. As we've seen many times in severe weather coverage in the southeast, sometimes you see projectiles that are stuck in very strange things. We're not talking that this is going to be a major tornado like we see in places like Oklahoma, but this definitely has the potential to be dangerous and possibly deadly.
Especially because it is nighttime now. The sun is going down, and a lot of times these could be rain wrapped. You might not see the exact structure of it, although the cell is rather tiny, so it's not embedded in a widespread rain shield for that matter, but you don't want to go looking for it, especially if you're driving. And we always say a car, you don't want to be in a car in that case as well.
We actually just sent some video into our news where we want to share with our viewers. This is video of the waterspout near El Waco. If you can look closely there on the right side of your screen, that there is video of the waterspout. Looks ominous.
Yeah, from your expertise, Mike and Ashley, what are you seeing with that waterspout?
I am looking off, I can definitely see that. You can see how
it looks far in the distance in this video.
Right.
And do we have confirmation that this is the same? This just shows the environment that these are developing in. They're definitely ripe. You can have these waterspouts develop, and typically when they run into some of that friction from the coast and from the land, they usually dissipate mostly. But in this case, how it's moving to now the northeast and could move back over water, that is why, more than likely, why that warning was extended to include Aberdeen and into Grays Harbor, because initially it was just for the Pacific County, and now it was extended because of its trek to the northeast. It is about to move back over water. It's been extended till 5 per our producer.
We're just getting an update on that.
So it's moving fairly fast, it looks like, as well.
And that's good news. We want these to move fast. We do not want these to sit and linger. The quicker that this thing can make its way on shore and destabilize, the better. But again, with that, it's also got velocity. Circling back to the waterspout, we get a lot of videos and photos in from folks all the time, like, hey, I saw a tornado. And first of all, to differentiate, a waterspout is not necessarily a tornado. Same mechanics, and whenever you see them, it's a sure sign of danger. But basically what it is the long and short of it is what we were talking about there earlier. Relatively warm air, relatively cold air, both of them fighting for dominance. They both want to be in the same spot at the same time, so they start to wrap around each other. That's why you get that cyclonic turn that takes place. Over water, it's a lot easier for that to happen because no resistance and a bigger differentiation in temperature. Cold air, warm ocean. But as we're seeing here, this has got enough velocity that as it's coming on land, there is the possibility that that fight's going to come from the water onto the coast here. So again, just to reiterate, we haven't had any confirmations of any tornadic activity on the ground here, but the probability of it, the possibility of it is still very high even as we speak. And the fact that it's been extended out to 5 is also kind of a sure sign that this is a serious situation.
What else is concerning, and I think, Mike, you mentioned this, but just the area that is under a tornado warning right now because Ocean Shores, looks like that huge cell there is not going over that area, but it's just the atmosphere, right? Like we're seeing all of these water spouts. These could pop up
Anywhere in this area.
Anywhere, okay.
Yeah, and Adam, actually, if you could zoom in for us a little bit for a second. First of all, Adam just showed us that, still stormy up towards Forks, but just specifically what we're talking about here, and just to give you some context, Ocean Shores, Westport. So for the most part, this one particular cell has already cleared these areas. Now we're watching it move across open water. Markham is definitely a place where you should be paying very close attention right now. There's Grays Harbor City towards there. Burroughs is pretty much right off of the shore there, so that's an area that could be potentially dangerous. You can see this cell where, and Ashley was just saying, wherever you see the yellows, wherever you see the oranges, this is where the peak of the intensity is. And again, as Adam's coning right near Markham, we also see that very strong cell. In fact, if you take a look here, it kind of pulses pink for a second. That is definitely where we could see some rotation and possibly some storm activity. Even if this doesn't turn out to be tornadic, there's a possibility of gusty winds again in excess of 50 miles an hour in an area that's already been been battered. So South Arbor, Grays Harbor City, Woodlawn, these are the areas that we're keeping a close eye on, but also this particular cell here as it moves towards Burroughs and then eventually off towards 101.
This is also very popular. We talk about the people who live in this area, but this is also a very popular area for people who are visiting Washington who aren't really familiar with these roads, because I'm very familiar with these roads. I come out in Seabrook too often. So these are very rural roads. You got a lot of one-lane highways, a lot of twists and turns, and there's a lot to worry about this late in the day when you have no sunlight as well, and you have these storms rolling through.
Absolutely, and you don't have a lot of choices there, right?
Exactly.
You know, there's just a lot of two-lane roads.
Right.
You don't have options to kind of zig or zag or take an off-ramp. So again, worst case scenario, and hopefully people aren't hearing us in their cars right now, but if this ever happens to you, always just think cover.
Yeah.
You want to get as in tight as you can. So worst case scenario, if you are in a vehicle, get down as low as you can in the vehicle. Get that vehicle to a place where it's not near trees or anything that could potentially fly. But yeah, if you find yourself out on a rural road somewhere and there's a cone coming towards you, just get low.
Another thing, you see this more so in the South and then in the Plains as well, people want to always run toward an overpass. And I mean, we see that time and time again, but it acts as a funnel. And so those winds start to pick up even more. And that's one of the most dangerous places that you could be during a tornado if you are in your car.
That's true.
People will want to get out of their car and go on that underpass, but it's the wind tunnel effect. Mm-hmm. It just sucks all that wind and it can cause some major issues. It can kill somebody. We're not trying to scare people, but these are just things to think of, because we're seeing tornado warnings in place for Washington. We don't get them often, but when we do, they could pose a threat.
And again, just to reiterate, there's 3 levels to that. Remember, there's an advisory, a watch, and a warning. This is not an advisory. This is not a watch. This is an active warning that's in place right now. So it's not one of those theoretical, this maybe could happen kind of things. There is a possibility that this could continue to move in. Now, as we take a look out, and Adam's doing a great job of kind of zooming us around here and helping us out, you're seeing some of these cells. And again, this is a 30-minute loop. So what you're seeing is this thing came in just ferocious. But as we were discussing earlier, Steve, as it continues to make its way inland, you can see it dissipating there. So those big bright colors that we had even 30 minutes ago, now starting to diminish a little bit. We just want to make sure that this thing gets clear of the water before it makes its way into land. That topography will kind of help to shear it and tear it apart a little bit and like destabilize it. But Jessica, you were asking me earlier about what about the rest of the night. Well, take a look here. You've got cells that are just continuing to come in one after another. You're seeing a lot of lightning there that again indicates instability. It doesn't seem warm because the ocean's about 50 some odd degrees right now. It's not warm to the touch, but compared to these clouds, compared to this moisture and what's moving over top of it, there's a huge differentiation between this cold, and this warm. And so what we've got there is that rotation and the possibility of convection, where that's where we're seeing the hail from. These are convective storms as they grow and that hail grows inside of them. These are like legitimate thunderstorms, but also you see that possibility that these things are going to continue to move in along the shore for the whole rest of the night.
So I have a quick question. With the tornado warning box that's right near Ashley, it says observed. Does that mean there has been a tornado observed? How do we get confirmation of that? And what's the difference between what's happening further south compared to what is happening Forks? Obviously no tornado warning up north.
Well, with the observed, that means that the National Weather Service, whether it's a storm spotter or they could see it on a camera, they were able to make confirmation that we had that waterspout offshore.
Oh, so still the waterspout. Okay.
As far as we know, we haven't heard of any updates, but that's why it is coined observed, because it was seen, and it's still showing those signs of the spin, the rotation. And so that's why that was extended to now 5 o'clock. And so per the National Weather Service, typically when we get these warnings, it's either radar indicated. That means that it has that potential. It's showing some signs of spin, but observed, that means it was seen. And in this case, that waterspout offshore. So we haven't had any updates from the National Weather Service whether or not we've seen it on the ground so far.
Okay.
But that could change.
The team at the National Weather Service in Seattle,
They're
by the way,
amazing.
over at Sandpoint is fantastic. We have a great relationship with them. They have all the tools where they're watching this very closely, but they're probably doing the same thing that we are right now. They're receiving a ton of information, so they've probably seen the same video that we just watched a moment ago, where there was definitely a confirmed waterspout out there. And when you take that and the characteristics of these storm cells and put those together, that would technically qualify as observed. And again, something that's potentially dangerous and bears our full attention.
But we're not seeing that rotation up near Forks.
Not yet. But
Not-
again, as you take a look at some of these cells that are making their way in there, I mean, these definitely have the potential for it as well. But yeah, as it stands right now, no watches, no warnings in effect there. But as we're seeing, that could change here as we go through the rest of the evening.
Is the time of year that this is happening normal? I mean, here we are just a week out from Thanksgiving. We've got this going on. Is this normal here?
I'd say absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. November is typically a time where we'll see some very strong storms. And again, when you think about it in the big picture, right, we're going into winter. Now, first of all, we've discussed at length that this is going to be a weak La Nina this year. What I have observed is that typically when we go into a La Nina winter, it comes in with a bang. You usually have that big, strong storm in November that kind of kicks things off. Here we are. In fact, we've seen a series of them. We've been in first alert for the better part of the last 30 days or so. But on top of that, this is kind of typical for this time of year, because if you think about it, again, it's a fight. The warm air of fall doesn't want to leave, and the cold air of winter wants to move in, and neither of them can seem to agree or come to a consensus. So what we're looking for is called homeostasis. It's kind of a big word, but it's basically stability.
Yeah.
Just trying to find some sort of equilibrium. And right now, there's a battle taking place. You've got relatively warm air that doesn't want to move. You've got relatively cold air that wants to move in and take over, and neither of them want to budge. So that's kind of the basics of it. November is typically when we see a lot of severe weather. Think back 3 years ago, we had those really strong storms that just flooded out Sumas. You remember in lots of areas across the region here where we had severe weather, that was in November.
Anyone that has seen tornado damage, you know, your jaw just drops, right? It just is so destructive. How fast are the winds right now, even if it's not spinning, even if it's not a tornado on the ground, but how fast are those winds blowing right now?
They could definitely be, especially because with the environment, this storm, even if it's not rotating, not spawning a tornado right now, could easily be up to about 40, 50 miles per hour. And we have those gradient winds on top of that as well. And so even if it's not tornadic per se anymore, could still be producing some gusty showers embedded within it, because we're not seeing any strikes of lightning. But either way, the winds are going to pick up. You don't want to go outside and look to see, oh, is that tornado coming to my house? Regardless, I mean, and like Mike mentioned, the high wind warning, it's still pretty gusty there. And so there could have been some damage and power outages near the coast as well. So, yeah.
And sorry, just to jump on that, one of the things the difference between a tornado and a hurricane, for example, is when a hurricane's moving in, we can judge that central pressure. We know that this has 150 mile an hour winds. It's going to be a category 3, whatever. With a tornado, we don't really know how strong the winds are until the National Weather Service gets a chance out there and to assess the damage. That's when they give us an indication of how strong those winds are. Now, remember, this is cyclonic. And what that means, again, I'm throwing around some big words here, but basically, if you think about a figure skater, when a figure skater is doing a spin, when their arms are out like this, they're spinning slowly. When they start to pull those arms in, they start to spin very quickly. So just dovetailing off of what Ashley was just saying there, the closer you are to the center of circulation there, the stronger the probability of those winds becoming very strong very quickly. So you could see winds that are 40, 50 miles an hour around the periphery of it, but towards the center, those winds can get up 70, 80, sometimes even 100 miles an hour. So it's very difficult for us to say exactly what those winds are doing right now.
And another thing to point out as well, Mike, it does appear as though it's weakening. The radar site's right there. So it is very close to being over the radar site, more so to the south of it. And so when you have these radar beams going into the storm, this is going to be at a lower elevation up in the sky. And so that at least would give us a better feel of where some of these stronger winds could be and some of the heaviest rain. And so right now, it does appear as though that it's not holding on to its intensity, even as it moves over water. So that is some good signs there. I do believe we have some new video. You want to check it out? Let's see.
Our producer is telling us that this was near North Cove. It's from our viewer, Shooter McGavin. So we want to say thanks to that viewer. And it was taken about 4:15 this afternoon and just south of Westport and Ocean Shores. So that checks out with that big cell that we were tracking for quite some time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I would say. I mean, the National Weather, either someone called it in, maybe a storm spotter. We have so many of those out there, and you are our eyes out there, obviously safely, but these are certified storm spotters. We don't know if that was called in, or they saw that video, but that is likely why that tornado warning observed was issued.
And just to dovetail on that, if you are a weather aficionado, if you really enjoy weather and you want to get involved, the National Weather Service has a fantastic program to become a trained storm spotter so that they can tell you exactly what to look for, the criteria, so that we just don't have people calling in going, we saw a tornado. They can actually train you to help them to help us. And so, if you're interested in doing it, contact the National Weather Service in Seattle or Spokane, and they can definitely help you out with that.
And they appreciate it too.
Yeah, for
because,
sure.
I mean, they're in an office. They can't go out and chase these storms as well. So that really does help as well. The good news, Mike, 5 more minutes. We'll see if this gets extended. But as of now, I mean,
It appears to be weakening.
109, here's 101, here's Aberdeen.
Adam, can you throw us back onto a loop again? Can you throw us back onto that 30-minute loop? Is that way we can kind of get a sense? There we go. We got some motion happening again. Because as you watch these cells, the 2 in particular that I've got my eyes on are right here. It's a little confusing because you see all that red there, which leads you to believe that there's, the storm activity there. That's just the footprint of the tornado warning. But as we continue to watch these 2 cells, what you'll notice is that even over the last 30 minutes or so, they've lost a lot of color. They've lost a lot of intensity. That's exactly what we're looking for here. Now, I would say of the 2, I'm more concerned with this one.
That one.
But again, more of a rural area. The one that's a little bit closer to Aberdeen has a closer possibility of hitting population. But see how there's still some color right in the center there. There is a possibility that this one could rotate as it comes on shore. This one, you can see already it's got a little bit of a split in it, which means that it's appearing to dissipate a little bit. That's exactly what we want it to do. If this thing was holding a really kind of concentric look to it or had really deep colors in the middle of it, we'd be very concerned right now. So again, appears to be good news, but as I've said many times, these things don't follow a script. They do what they want to do, and it's going to continue to push off towards the north and east with a little bit of a curve, hopefully taking it around Aberdeen towards the west.
I know it usually takes some time, right, for the National Weather Service to confirm if there was indeed a tornado?
For sure. It takes, so again, what's different about a tornado versus a hurricane is in hurricanes, you can track it in real time. Right. When this happens, all heck breaks loose, right? It's just, so it takes them a couple days sometimes to even get a team out there. And again, that's assuming that there is measurable damage. We were certainly hoping that there's not. The best case scenario here is this thing blows over and folks are like, hey, some trash cans fell over. But if there is measurable damage here, a special team comes out from NOAA or from the National Weather Service, and then they use measurements to basically assess how strong those winds were. So yeah, it may be a couple of days until we're actually able to give you any accurate information in terms of how strong this is, or even if there was any damage.
Yeah, obviously a huge concern right now. This is still ongoing, right? We still have a few minutes where we're in this warning, unless it's extended.
We'll get that confirmation within a couple of minutes if it is still holding together, which the latest radar scans aren't looking all too impressive in terms of a healthy environment for this thunderstorm to develop. And going back off to the damage, even if it spawned a tornado, the Weather Service, NOAA, they'd have to go out, survey that damage. So you can't say, oh, this produced 100-mile-per-hour winds. You won't know until that damage is assessed. And it could just be some wind gusts blowing around. With tornado damage, you have those twisting winds, debris going all different directions. Whereas the winds that we had last night in the foothills and then just up and down I-5, they were all going one direction.
And then just to give some context to this as well, is you'll hear after the fact that they'll assess it an EF number. It's an EF0, an EF1. That's the enhanced Fujita scale. And basically, here in Western Washington, we usually only get zeros or ones. So again, the probability that this is going to be an EF3 or EF4, like the type that we see across the Midwest or in Tornado Alley, is very low. I just want to make sure that that we're not overhyping this, but it is still potentially dangerous.
Just very quickly, as we're wrapping up this hour of news, obviously people hopefully are heeding the warnings and they're in an interior most part of their home.